Now, let's see what's happening in London, where Juliana Olayinka is standing by to tell us. Good morning, Juliana. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Bissy. Doing well. Thank you very much.
So let's start off with the IMF's predictions that the UK's economy will shrink by 6.5% in 2020, even as Chancellor Sunak has warned of tough times for the UK economy. How are these projections being digested in the UK?
Well, not very well. No surprises that the FTSE 100 opened lower by more than 100 points. And really, it hasn't been a great start to Britain, not a great start to the entire world. Of course, those IMF predictions came with the fact that the world will be heading into a recession not seen since the Great Depression. And yes, part of that reflection was that 6.5% of Britain's GDP could be lost, which is the worst slump that we would have seen in 300 years, of course, including the fallout from World War I and World War II. And this follows yesterday's data from the Office for Budget Responsibility looking at the consequences of COVID-19 in the UK. And they predicted that in this quarter, which is Q2, GDP could fall by as much as 35%. And that really shifted the discussion in the UK from health to the health of the economy. And we are starting to hear growing frustration from the opposition, from big business leaders in the UK, just about how we are going to start easing out of this lockdown. Yesterday, Chancellor Rishi Sunak delivered the daily briefing, and he was pretty honest in saying that tough times will be ahead and not every business can be saved and not every household will be receiving the measures that they need to live a decent and fulfilled life. On top of the 35% fall, the Office for Budget Responsibility also announced that they expect a further 2 million people to fall into unemployment. So pretty grim economic picture from Britain today.
Well, the Confederation of British Industry has warned that firms are at risk of permanently cutting staff unless the government provides clarity over whether it will extend its job retention scheme. Where is the government on this scheme?
Well, sorry, I missed the end of your last point there, Bissy, but in terms of what's happening with the Confederation for British Industry, their chief executive, Caroline Fairbairn, has been speaking to the Today programme on the BBC, and she was pretty honest about, some of the struggles that particularly small businesses are having with the government. Yes, many of them have successfully signed up to the government's retention scheme, which was Chancellor Rishi Sunak's opportunity to try and urge businesses to keep their employees in place. They'll be paying up to 80% of salaries to the tune of £2,500. But a lot of businesses are worried about the lockdown and how far the lockdown will go. At the moment, the retention scheme covers employees up to the 1st of June. Employees are asking whether or not, it needs to be extended. And if it won't be extended, then there are suggestions that they'll have to let people go because they have to give a lot of notice. These are some of the teething issues that many of the government's measures are facing, purely because, of course, these are unprecedented times, and these measures and these legislations have been drawn up really quickly. Parliament isn't seating at the moment, and there seems to be a divide in the cabinet right now between sorting out the economy and focusing on people's health. And of course, businesses and livelihoods get stuck in the middle of that.
Very well, Juliana, one of the issues is the fact that women's fashion retailers Oasis and Warehouse are expected to appoint administrators soon. Of course, that puts about 2,300 jobs at risk. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, I was really surprised at hearing this story because especially our viewers in the UK, they'll be very familiar with Warehouse and Oasis, really popular fashion retailer, similar to the size of, I would say, something like Topshop. Yes, they have announced that they'll be pulling in an auditor. I think Deloitte is the accountant that will be going through their books. And it's really because they're struggling. They've had to close their 90 stores. They're also in about 400 different different department stores dotted around the country, and they were already struggling before the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are some suggestions, Bissy, that the UK retail high street will not look the same again after the pandemic because some businesses simply can't survive. Laura Ashley was one of the first to go. That retailer had been around for decades, and just last week Debenhams, which is quite a big popular department store, they also announced that they'd be going into administration. Who knows? There is an opportunity for Warehouse and Oasis to get a bailout like we've seen with other department stores, but at the moment everybody's tightening up their purse strings. So it does appear that when the COVID-19 pandemic is over and the lockdown measures are lifted, that they won't be on the high street anymore.
One last question, Juliana. What's the outlook for today's markets?
Well, the outlook for today's markets are pretty tight. The FTSE 100 opened lower by about 100 points. Of course, overnight we had that shocking statement from US President Donald Trump saying that he will be stopping his funding or halting it at least to the World Health Organization, which has really sent everybody into a tailspin. The US are not happy with the treatment that they believe the World Health Organization has been given to China. They believe they've been over-friendly with them. They also believe that they have stopped any of the misinformation that potentially could have been coming out of China over the pandemic. At the moment, we've seen that the US has the highest death rate. Over 25,000 US citizens have died. And Donald Trump, you know, by all means is really keen to kickstart the American economy because he had hoped that in November, the US election would be a referendum on the US economy. And of course, up until this point, it had been doing so well. So I believe that is really going to affect the markets. And it'll be interesting to see just how the Dow Jones opens up a little bit later in the day. And of course, I think most people will be looking at the lockdown measures that are currently taking place across Europe, particularly in Germany and Spain. Germany and Spain are, of course, on two opposite sides. On the one hand, Germany has been praised with just how well it's reacted to the outbreak. And of course, Spain has had deaths up into the thousands. But unlike some other countries, it just simply cannot take the economic fallout by allowing shops and businesses to stay closed for too much longer.
All right, Juliana, thanks for those updates. We'll see you again at 1:30. Let's bring things back home now to the debt and currencies market, and the chief dealer fixed income at FBN Quest Merchant Bank, Ramad Baba, joins us. Good morning, Ramad. So the bond market broke its 5 consecutive days of yield contraction yesterday, and that's as yields ended northwards. Was that as a result of distractions from the last day of book building on Dangote cement bond?
Good morning, Bissy. I think that the slowdown was actually as a result of different issues coming into the market. We had the Dangote bond in the market yesterday. We had the Axela bond, and then we had a few other CP market. So I think that caused a bit of distraction for investors as they try to switch into areas of higher yield.
But how did the Dangote cement 100 billion naira issue pan out for treasurers and dealers generally?
I think the issue was oversubscribed. Results are not out. The issue is closed. It closed yesterday, so we await the outcome in the next coming days.
Ramad Baba, thanks for talking to us this morning. And that's where we wrap up today's program. Thank you for watching. I am Bissy Adebayo.